Hello, everybody, and welcome to this bonus show.
Welcome to the bonus show.
Bonus show. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the bonus show. Happy Monday to you, or Tuesday, whenever you choose to listen to this.
Or it could be a Wednesday or through Sunday.
Wow.
I believe podcasts are on-demand
That is
media,
crazy.
so you can actually listen whenever. Wherever we're meant to be together, I'll be there and you'll be near. There's something else in there. What was that lyric?
And that's the truth, my dear.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
We'll go with that. Hey, shout out to Shakira, big fan of the podcast. Mate, you've had a chat without me for this little bonus side.
I have, yeah.
Am I not invited anymore? Actually, can we talk about what this? So there was a message that came through, but it was regarding one of the posts that we made. What post was it around?
Yeah, it was actually, this is the funny story about this is for my first child, Indy, we had a discussion on a bonus ode 2.5 years ago, where I talked for the first time about the idea of not having a healthy baby, and how I felt the language used in the medical model when going through the scans of my daughter felt icky now that I'm part of the disability community and an ally. So the conversation was like this idea that, congratulations, you've got a healthy baby, and there's you're the lowest percentile chance of having a child with Down syndrome, and these language around celebrating what they believe when your kid's in utero around, not having disability. And so therefore stigmatizing that for if it does happen for parents. We know with cerebral palsy, for example, a lot of it's just like a lack of oxygen at birth. It isn't seen in any of the scans. So these parents have gone through 9 months or 7 months being told by a doctor, congratulations, well done, parents.
You got a healthy baby.
Yeah, you got a healthy baby.
What does healthy even mean as well?
Exactly.
Like I'm healthy. Like I'm paraplegic and in a wheelchair, but I'm healthy you know what I mean? So
and we had that conversation, and it's one of those things with podcasts. We don't have an audience in front of us. We have a camera and a microphone, and I got a message from a woman named Zoe, and we're going to hear from her, so I'm not going to read out the message. She'll do that herself. But it really stuck with me that something that we had discussed as a podcast had changed someone's life. And I'm not saying that like, hey, pat us on the back. This isn't one of those episodes. We're about to hear from Zoe with my chat with her earlier. It was more about recognizing the stigmas that can happen and how one person went from that exact example we just spoke about, being told that you've got a healthy child, to noticing something was different at birth. And so you're not part of this because you're not a dad. So don't come into my world.
what about Sauce?
You're not a dad, so don't come into my world.
He's a dog. No, this is good.
No,
I'm
no,
excited.
But no, Dylan wasn't available at the time, and I thought it best to chat to Zoe because obviously it was the words that I said that meant so much to her and her family. And yeah, we hope you enjoyed this episode.
I'm going to listen live too.
So I wrote to you and I said, just wanted to reach out and say something that you said on a podcast a long time ago had such a profound impact on me. Before your first baby was born, you talked about how people would say things like, as long as the baby is healthy. I found I heard this a lot throughout my pregnancy, and despite wanting to birth a so-called healthy baby, I also found comfort in knowing that whatever happened, I'd be okay. My husband and I and my baby would get through whatever happened. My daughter was born 7 months ago, and immediately after delivery, I noted she had malformed ears and was told within a few hours that she likely had a genetic condition and that she was hard of hearing due to having no ear canals. I'm a pediatric occupational therapist, so disability is not foreign to me. And prior to having my daughter, it was already an everyday part of my life to see, interact, and assist kids and parents with disability. But not until you candidly discussed it in your interview, your views towards it as a parent, had I thought about it in this way. My daughter has only in the past few weeks been diagnosed with Treacher syndrome. And although many parts of the future still terrify me, I feel grateful that there is a resource such as this podcast to reference to friends and family who feel like they don't know how to talk to us about our daughter, afraid they'll say the wrong thing, and to educate those that have said the wrong thing to us while understanding people still have so much to learn, just as we do in this new role as parents. Anyway, thank you for using the platform the way that you do.
Going through the process and being told through these scans that everything's looking all clear, low percentile, all of those conversations. Do you believe, because, my daughter at the moment isn't presenting with disability. My son's due in November, and I'm being told the classic line of healthy baby. Do you believe that it does, because I don't have the example like you, that it sets you up a little bit to fail the medical model around language because, you get this incredible moment of your child placed on your chest, and you've been told everything's going well and delivered well and put on your chest for that first skin on skin contact, and you notice something is, and I'm using little ears, wrong. Can you take us through how that felt? Do you feel like is there what kind of general process you believe you would have liked, or language used throughout the process, to kind of make that moment a little less scary? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So yeah, like you said, I didn't know throughout my whole pregnancy, and then it was pretty obvious, like immediately at birth, that there was something different, and that Remy displayed with facial difference. So to be told your whole pregnancy and then to find out immediately, it kind of almost robbed us of that like elating experience at birth. So obviously we're still over the moon. We didn't know we were having a girl, so that was really exciting for us. But it was just so different because you're in that moment where you're, everyone else says it's the best moment of their life. You're also handed this news that, okay, there's something going on here, and something unexpected, and something that we're going to have to navigate for the rest of our lives and the rest of her life as well. So it's pretty full on. And I think, you go to all these birthing classes and they teach you these birthing techniques. And I did some further education around, like, what does sleep look like for a baby? And we did a baby first aid course. But there's no sort of education in that space when you're pregnant about, well, how are you going to feel if you have a child that has a disability? Or how are you going to feel if your child acquires a disability at birth? And these are real things that happen to people, and it happened to us. But there was no, just nothing, I suppose, that I think we were given prior.
Being really honest and vulnerable, if you're open to it, Zoe, can you take us into the conversation of two people who, and I'm sorry, I'm actually being quite presumptuous about this, with your husband being, identifying as being able-bodied. But can you talk us through the conversations that maybe you guys had in those fearful early moments about what this was going to be like, if you can, or share whatever you feel?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we both responded to it very differently. As I mentioned, I worked as an occupational therapist. I still do prior. So disability for me was part of my everyday life. For my husband, it wasn't. Yeah. So we definitely responded very differently. And I found our communication had to improve instantly. There was no hiding our feelings from one another. We had to share what we were feeling in that moment. And there was a lot of sadness. I'll be completely honest with you. And that word grief gets thrown around a lot, and I don't love that word, and I know you and Dylan have spoken about that with a number of guests before. I was told by family members and psychologists it's okay to grieve, and for me I was like, I'm not grieving. She's here with me. There are things that I'm worried about. There are things that I'm really sad about. There are things that I thought I would be doing. I thought I'd be going to mothers groups and going for walks and, doing all these lovely things that I had planned for my motherhood experience. But we weren't doing that. We were going to therapy appointments, and, my husband had to go back to work. And for me, that was a really big part of our relationship that was quite difficult. I was going to 5 medical or therapy appointments a week, and he's going off to work because he has to. And that's, we had to have some pretty hard conversations about what our roles are, and just be really open and honest. Feeling sad. Do we need extra support? What can we do for our daughter? And what do we picture our life to look like now that things might be different, and it's scary and overwhelming, but it can also be beautiful and lovely.
Yeah, grieving is a tough word to say, but I don't think it's weird with being on a podcast about disability. I make mistakes all the time with my language, but I'm willing to learn. And I hope that the community who listens to our podcast understands that. And I do try and change my ways every time I do make a mistake, because I am trying to be as inclusive as possible. But yeah, you can be sad for sure, but you don't have to be sad necessarily for your daughter, who might grow up to be a superstar and will grow up to be a superstar in her way as she's going to be. But you can be sad that your daughter's not going to hear you say "I love you" for a longer period of time than somebody else's might, for sure. And you might not hear that back for a while longer, but there's going to be ways, when she gets the chance to communicate, to say that, and that's going to be super special. Sorry, I just choked up a little bit because, yeah, that's tough. I can't even imagine that. So yeah, that's sorry, that's really tough. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, it's one that I don't get to have a conversation with Dylan about because we can't relate. But it's so scary without disability.
Yeah.
And I think it's okay to say it's scared. You can be scared and you can be sad for sure. I'm sad about the fact that I just thought about not being able to communicate with my daughter, and that's your reality, and that would make me sad. But it doesn't change the light and brightness of your daughter's future. And speaking of which, what is the future for you as it stands? What communication have you had now? You've obviously done every single bit of research around her specific disability. What does that look like for you? What are the next months and years in your life and household?
Yeah, so she got a hearing aid, so a bone conduction hearing aid when she was 2 weeks old. So I bypassed the audiologist appointment that was set for 4 weeks and just went straight there and got one. And I just was sort of told that she might be able to access sound through that way. So I thought, let's give it a go. If we find out at 4 weeks that it's not working, then we haven't lost anything, but we've tried something. And I think you wait for that moment when you put the hearing aid on that you see all over TikTok and Instagram, that there's like this big the
viral videos.
Yeah, my baby
the first thing when they put glasses on a child and they see mum and dad for the first time, all of those videos, that sort of inspirational ideology that we get around TikToks and Reels. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And my husband and I were I think pinned to that sort of but she's 2 weeks old and she's sleeping 18 hours a day. So realistically, were we going to have that kind of response? And yeah, we just started learning Auslan. So we've done some online courses. Lots of our family members have jumped in and starting to learn Auslan. So I think we do know that she can hear some sounds at the moment through her audiology testing and the way she's responding to us, but she's 10 months old, and to what degree she can hear or understand spoken language is still unknown, I suppose, but we want her to have access to language in general. So we're learning Auslan as we go. We're fumbling our way through that, but we're trying our hardest, and just want to be able to communicate with her in whatever form that may be.
Zoe, the message meant so much to me. I respond. I'm the one who has the account. I respond to every single DM personally. So yeah, that one, it stuck out so much that I flagged it immediately that, I'd love to speak to you and have this conversation one-on-one around parents and disability. And we do have guests with who are parents with disability, but yeah, something struck a chord because you're not the first person to say, when you say things, you don't believe or understand the impact of what you're saying sometimes when it's your job. And yes, so to hear that, I don't know, 18 months on, 2 years on from me, maybe not even that long, 6 months on from that episode airing, it had an impact on you or it's stuck in your mind and it directly affected your life. That's super special. And, it's a real connection. And I'm really thankful for it. And, I've got my baby boy due in November. And, I do a podcast on disability, and half of my job is now in the community of disability, whether it be on the socials or whether it be creating the content that we do. I've got 2 other disability podcasts that I help out with. And the medical model, or as it stands, still doesn't support this community, the largest minority in the world. And come November, if something happens, I still won't be prepared. I know it. Yep. I just know it. And I've got this back resource of everything that we have through this podcast, which I'm super grateful for. But thanks for sharing your journey. And I can't wait to see the future of your daughter. And It hasn't stopped you from, are you going to try for a child number 2? Because that does happen a bit. There's some, people get a little bit scared about going for another bub.
And that's a real conversation my husband and I are having at the moment. So we've had our genetics tested as well. And yeah, that's a real conversation that we're having at the moment. And it can be a really tricky one because it's, I suppose, not the start that you want for your child. And I suppose with our daughter, she has maybe a less mild case, some might say, of Treacher-Collins syndrome. She doesn't have many of the characteristics that some others have. But if we were to have another child that did have that same genetic variant, then they might have it worse. And that might mean sort of more time in medical centres, more time in hospitals, and maybe even potentially fatal. So, real conversations that my husband and I have to have, and things that you never would have thought you'd have to have those kind of conversations.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that was beautiful. That's why we do the podcast.
Yeah. And thanks to Zoe as well, because I remember I was sitting on the toilet. I was sitting on the toilet here at work and I read it, and I had to take a moment.
That's beautiful, mate.
And I know that's such bad imagery,
you
but
got
I was like,
glassy eyes even talking about it. Which is nice.
it was lovely to hear that this podcast had that impact, because usually it's Dylan, and you're the words that change people's lives from your lived experience. So it was nice to just be a part of someone's journey.
What's one problem with that episode?
A lack of Dylan Alcott?
No, not this episode now, the one that stemmed from. You put up a social media post around big baby news and had a photo of me going,
oh, yeah.
And then there was articles, questions from my family, people messaging me saying, congratulations.
You're saying clickbait?
You clickbaited our audience.
So
Shanti was not stoked about that clickbait because she got asked questions too.
Isn't that weird? When I made that YouTube thumbnail or Instagram post, I thought your reaction, which was you mouth a gasp, showed that you were reacting to news.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
because it's like Dylan's mouth is slowly a gasp, and you wouldn't say that if you're telling me you've got a baby.
It could have been like you telling me, Shanti, that I'm having a baby.
No.
That was weird.
I think that's a bit of a workaround. But can you understand my perspective? Yeah. I was like, it's obvious that it's my news because... And also I was like actually being more transparent because there's like an ultrasound of a baby on there.
Yeah, but it just looked like it could have been mine.
I can understand where you're coming from because we did get some comments going, someone was like, hey, congratulations, Angus. Disappointed it wasn't Dylan.
Yeah,
literally our YouTube comments of that.
My mate Tom, keeps like, mate, so proud of you, congrats. And then he listened to the episode, he goes, oh, it's not you.
Yeah. So I'll apologise for it, but I thought it was obvious.
You're trying to get a job of the day, mate. You're trying to get a job.
It was a bit clickbaity.
Let's keep that to a minimum.
Anyway.
Beautiful episode. Love you.
There you go.